This is a simple HTML version of an 8-dot Brailler. And the reason why I made it is we got this weird divide where when you're on a computer, you want to communicate exactly with the computer. You want to type in the same exact bytes as a sighted person. Because the whole reason to use a computer for Braille is not to communicate with blind people, it's to communicate with sighted people. It's to have a job and to be good at your job. So one of the things about it is just like you have to learn programming languages to communicate with computers to meet them in the middle, you kind of have a similar situation with Braille. So as an example, if you load up rfielding.github.io/editor.html, you have a simple typewriter application that allows you to mix together typing in plain QWERTY and Perkins input. And so, for example, I just typed this as a test, comma, carriage return, and I did that in QWERTY. I can use the escape key to toggle to get a Perkins keyboard. For the most part, when you're using a Perkins keyboard, you would be typing 6-dot Braille, but you can use your pinkies to include the 8 dots. And for the most part, you do that so that you can use .7 for capitalizing either letters or quote-unquote capitalizing punctuation. It allows you to get to all of the printable ASCII characters. In fact, you can even get to the non-ASCII characters and type every 256 values of a byte as a dot representation, which is kind of interesting because it makes Braille kind of a superpower in that sense, because sighted people, there's a limited number of characters that they deal with. And there isn't like a add 128 to the byte thing that you can just see, and you can do that with Braille dots. But in any case, I'm going to type the same thing I typed before in Perkins. So this is a test, and I'm going to use the ASCII version of the dot, which is the same as the period inside of numbers. It kind of looks like a K, but it's shifted one row over to the right. So you can also edit in the middle. So I type something in Perkins and I want to insert a word in the middle of it, and so I just type it in QWERTY. You can use this to learn 8-dot Braille just by learning through experience, by just like typing up like normal things. Let's see, page 1 shopping list. So you have side by side. It allows you to see the punctuation because you type it in QWERTY and you see it in 8-dot Braille, and you can look at either side while you're working. So if you're typing in Perkins, you can be looking over at the other side, and you'll see the weird like non-ASCII or non. It's plain text, but it's like a weird plain text when you're typing in Braille. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. So if I eggs, milk, soy, and whole. Okay. There's only a couple controls on here. Besides switching between Perkins and QWERTY for your input, which will make it very easy to type weird things in contracted Braille. You can switch pages, so you basically treat them as like separate sheets of paper. And if you're on a laptop, you may have to do function up arrow to do page up, page down. It's not something that's universally implemented on all keyboards and hardware. But yeah, so see, I type PGE rather than page, and I can type that. I was in Perkins mode, so I typed that in QWERTY mode. So going back and forth and fixing things. And this is where things get interesting. Page 2 of this, I start typing mathematical equations. Say I want to do a specification of some calculus stuff, right? D operator of A plus B is equal to D of A plus D of B. And you're just looking at a font rendering of the actual ASCII stuff being typed. And this is not like literal like Unicode Braille being shown here. This is just ASCII just shown in a font, which is useful because when you're in a computer terminal, all your tools just happen to work. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by just work. So if I go to here, so I'm in a shell in Bash, and I'm at the root of a file system, and I cd to a code directory, and I open up Vim. And as a sighted person trying to learn Braille, what's really awesome is because I didn't translate it out of ASCII and I left it in Braille in the actual terminal, all the tools actually work. So I'm in Vim and a syntax highlighter actually works, which is pretty useful if you're trying to learn things visual to get started. For instance, you know there's Python. You know that says DEF, has to say DEF. And it says USLCONSTR. USBCONS. Yeah. But anyways, is where it's interesting. You have when you have numbers inside of square brackets, and it can actually line up the square brackets because it recognizes them as square brackets, and it's not like, it hasn't been translated. This is like what I don't like about UEB. UEB will take things and like make it impossible to like use the Unix tools that actually work on a command line already. And you notice some weird things is so that's a punctuated letter, uppercase letter, right? So but you also have the .7 on some of the common punctuation. So this here would be exponentiation. So this is something squared, right? So this says pound is a comment, and it says grad, G-R-A-D, and in parenthesis 1 divided by 2 in parenthesis 1/2 uppercase F to the 2, F squared, right? Yeah, and that's an underscore character there, right? So that also has a punctuation dot. And you notice that the special font that I have, one thing I don't like about the visual illegibility of most Braille fonts. If you use the Unicode Braille fonts, they'll like have the outline dot fonts and they actually obscure like what dots are on or off. Like I can't tell the difference sometimes if the font is small. So all you really need is you need to mark where the bottom of the 6 dot stuff is, and just like some characters drop below that line. When dot 7 is turned on, it'll be below the line, and it just makes it really, really unambiguous. Like even when you make the font small, it really speeds up being able to read the Braille. Anyway, so, and I'll show you what it is I'm looking on the other side. So if I do code, and I'm in Vim, so I can go side by side and learn Braille like this. And where this is really useful, so you want to do algebra. So read line wrap is a program to wrap around binary programs for terminal programs for getting things like finding repeated commands, thing you have in a shell. Like so running the program Maxima, and it looks like this in Braille, and I will run it side by side. So it says %I1, which means the first input. So if I say let's see, x plus y squared times x plus 3, I do something like that. That's a little bit of a problem when you're using a Braille terminal, so you want to say display 2D false. So I turn off 2D display of things, so they just show up here. And if I do expand, I can do algebra like that. And if I want to do the same thing in Maxima, what you would see on a terminal would be like the last line, and you have to go up and down to see the previous line. If I do display 2D false, and if I type it right, I see the word false. And the good thing is you can go up and down through these and see commands. So if I do x plus y squared times z, something like that. No, I just that's wrong. So let's see, x plus y times z times z. Percent, not right. Okay. And the other thing is just like, bash and vim and all that stuff. So the good thing about using 8.Braille is all your tools just work. So you can use this to train to figure out the punctuation by doing. So instead of trying to look up the alphabet, I would suggest page, and I just do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I can see what that looks like. And you'll notice the little marks that I have, which you can actually see by looking at it, that this is lowercase numbers. It basically shifts down the letters one so that you can distinguish between numbers and letters, right? Because this would be J, A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, right? And it's you can actually see that it's shifted up. You can see where the cells are. So if I do, if I'm going to edit it to see the pattern in Braille, and this is kind of an interesting pattern. It's mod 10, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. So 1 through 9 and then go to 0 is basically the same pattern. It's just shifted down in 8-dot Braille. But at least you have the mark so you can actually tell the difference. And then when you go on, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, S, T, U, T, right? So you'll notice it's the same pattern where there's just been a dot turned on, dot 3. And then U, V, and you know something weird when you type W, you're like, what on earth? It doesn't fit the pattern anymore. And if you skip it and go X, Y, Z, you'll see it does match the pattern. And then when you type W to try and figure out where it goes, you see, well, it goes there. So, and you got to remember that you're actually looking at like real ASCII characters. It's just the font shows up looking like Braille so that you can actually read it. But if you do a Control B, then you have copied it to Unicode Braille. And so I go to a terminal and I do get out of Maxim, I guess. Right. Yeah. Put a new tab for this. Did I do it for this one? Yeah, no, I want a new tab for this one. Alright, so if I'm in Vim and I paste in here what I just did, I put it into actual Unicode, but you'll notice that the font is not the same as this one here. It doesn't have the underscores because it's the actual font. And you're kind of at the mercy of whether you use outline fonts. If you use outline fonts, they'll be totally illegible in some places. Because it'll show you like an unfilled dot versus a filled dot, and when they're small, you can't read them at all. Okay, in case, so this is how you can learn to do computer Braille. I'll show you a little bit of a problem with computer Braille though. If you type like what you'd see in actual Braille literature, you put it into Perkins mode and you type as if you're on a Perkins keyboard and you go, hello world. Well, that's a little strange because you see comma, hello, and then if I capitalize world, and say that I don't remember, you know, I'm like, what's the punctuation for when I'm using like normal Braille, but that's like the whole problem. Like you have to, you know, you may think the lowercase d is dot, the lowercase. I think it's that one actually. Is a 6? I don't remember, but I don't have anything yet to show what the standard Braille translation is going to be, like the UEB translation. I might have like yet a third window, because when you type regular 6-dot Braille, you literally don't have all the punctuation and stuff that you need to do code. Like, it sounds like a trivial thing, but you at least need a .7 to really interact with a computer. Because the problem is when you convert multiple cells, there's all kinds of ambiguities. Like when you type a character, you know, when does it flush out to be rendered to the computer, and it ends up being stateful. Like if you go take a substring of something, it's ambiguous, like what state it was in when you got the substring. So it's like people don't understand what an unambiguous prefix is to signed Braille. And unfortunately, you can't get away with that when you're using computers. Like passwords and hashes and stuff like that become a problem. Okay, yeah, so all I really have on this simple editor is pasting it to Braille Unicode, where the actual ASCII characters get lost. But that's how, like, if you wanted to do a Braille tweet, that's how you do it. You type you know, something in Twitter like I don't like. Oh, so start from QWERTY mode. You say I don't like bullet. All right, so you want to type something like that, and then you Control B to copy it, and then if you wanted to tweet something, I'm not going to press the tweet button, but that's the illegibility problem. so if I'm trying to remember. Yeah, so you have to get it like ridiculously large to even see. That's why I created my own font, because I truly hate this. That the Braille code is visually ambiguous without like a marker. But if you're on a hardware terminal, you can kind of tell where it is. The problem though is if you use the actual Braille Unicode, you're at the mercy of which dots it used. And under Safari they're legible, and under Firefox they're not, etc. In any case, if I expand this a bit just so you can see it, that makes it a heck of a lot more legible. I don't understand why they typically just use outlines, because outlines they're not a good idea. Okay. So yeah, so you practice and learn your Braille like this. You just do it by typing out things that you want to figure out like what they mean. So def main double N and then you want to figure out like what does a comment look like. And one of the first things you'll notice is like this construct here. This is what makes Braille kind of obnoxious for working with computers. So in regular Braille, this says that you want the number D, which is 4. But if you really want to type pound and D, which you always want to do, computer terminals and stuff, you just want a one-to-one mapping between ASCII. You can't really afford to like use all the space for contractions and kind of pretend that punctuation doesn't get used very often, because that's completely not true in a computer. And again, you may have to use function key arrow to go back and forth between all your pages. But that's it for now.